On January 7th, 2025, Sarah Gibbons and her husband raced to grab their three kids and their dog and take them to safety from the Palisades fire to an LAX hotel. Now, this process is far from over for her, but she is coming on to discuss with us how she is managing this crisis and how her tools as a professional coach who's coached everybody from executives at Starbucks to the LA Clippers to Chiat Day, and her time even as an executive at Amazon, and her degree, her master's degree in spiritual psychology, have helped her to maintain her emotional health, to maintain her professional health, her personal health, and to support her family through this crisis. I felt it was important to have her on, not just so we could, make sure she's okay, but also because these tools are really time proven in the worst of times. And they can actually help us to navigate whatever challenges we have, which for most of us is never going to come anything close to what Sarah is still going through. But these tools can be effective in helping us to achieve our highest good. So I do encourage you to listen to this important interview with Sarah Gibbons, to look into her leadership and executive training programs, and to, also listen back on Substack. All right, we'll be getting Sarah on with us in just a moment. All right, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. And I know that asking this question, I mean, my heart's already breaking to ask, but how are you doing now? And where are you? And, how are you feeling?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much, Natalie. I am honored to be able to spend time with you and also with your community. I was just sharing before we got started that the work that you do, I just feel like is needed more than ever now on all facets of your business. So, this question of how am I doing, I have to really check in with myself and be moment to moment. I'm finding now that I'm back at work, I'm able to compartmentalize a little bit. And I think I'm able to because I love what I do so much and I love the people I get to work with. And that's really been illuminated since I took a few weeks off. But I will say, underneath that, there is a tremendous amount of grief.
Yeah.
I was telling a friend of mine recently there was grief when it first happened and shock and all of that. And then as time has gone on and we've all had to start to make real decisions, the impact that the fires have had on whether you're, Malibu or Altadena or the Palisades is very real. And we're all forced to make very difficult decisions that completely change most of what we've known for a long time. So I would say in this moment, my heart is calm because I've been very excited to speak with you. And, then just like what grief does, it just sneaks up on you and you have a moment of like, oh my gosh, this is so painful and hard.
Yeah.
So, and we are now in Venice. We were in a hotel for almost a month, which was quite long, especially with three boys.
Yeah.
And then a client of mine gifted me her house for a couple of weeks, and that was like a giant warm hug. And then we finally found a place that could take not just our boys, but we also have three cats and a huge dog. So we found a place and we're here until the end of the school year, and then we'll reassess. So we're really grateful that we have a place that we can be for the next, 5, 6 months.
And that'll calm everything down a little bit. I mean, there's just so much to unpack here, but
Hmm.
when I was giving the intro, I was saying, look, most of us are never, thankfully, going to deal with what you're dealing with. My
Hmm.
heart is breaking for you. But what's interesting is that all of your skills, all of your training, all the things that you teach others, you're now
Hmm.
having to do for yourself. And it's time proven in many ways.
Yeah.
Additionally, you might
Yeah.
also be and what I liked as well is that when you send out your email, which absolutely broke my heart, but again, that's because I have a lot of friends in your neighborhood.
Hmm.
You said you were taking 21 days off. And so I want to
Mhm,
talk about that need, because, most of the people that are going to be watching this, their heart is going out to you, but they are never going to have to experience this. So,
mhm, mhm,
how about that? Put on your own oxygen mask first. For those of us, I know that it was imperative for you because of that email that you sent out, but for normal people that are going through what feels like a crisis to us, whether it's our
mhm.
personal life or our professional
That's
life,
right.
really isn't when we put it in context. What do you
Well,
think about that?
yes. First of all, I want to preface this by saying I'm in the mindset, I really believe that suffering is suffering. And so if you're having your own crisis, I would invite you to not measure it against the impact of the fires because that's your experience. And if you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to get myself out of bed and my mental health is struggling and my emotional and spiritual, then that warrants really taking a look at should I be putting my own oxygen mask on first? For me, I went and coached a few people right after it happened. This happened on a Tuesday. So I was in the middle essentially of my work week. Our boys had just gone back to school. And it wasn't until the following week where I had a moment to start to see, oh my gosh, my kids are totally impacted by this. One of them's school was partly burned, so he had no school to go to. My own well-being was certainly impacted. All of a sudden, I'm a runner. I didn't have the motivation at all to go running. I was just really noticing things like hypersensitivity to not having any sort of plan and feeling like my world was really spinning. And given the work that I do, one of the things that I believe is that it's really important for us coaches or therapists, anyone who's in this kind of service industry, to be as clean as we can on our side of the street. And that means so that we can show up and be of great service. And I don't want that to get confused with being perfect, but I could
Yeah,
feel that I was not clean, that I was struggling to be present in conversations. I was struggling to get my words out. I didn't feel it myself at all. And I was sharing this with one of my coaches who I've worked with on and off. And he really challenged me. And I want to give him credit because I pretty sure I would not have taken 3 weeks off. It never would have even occurred to me. And he said, I am going to turn your thinking upside down. I'm going to invite you to consider taking a month off. And I was like, that's absolutely not possible. I cannot do it. And he said, well, why not? And I gave him all the laundry list of reasons.
right.
And then he said to me, what do your people need to learn from you? And I said, oh my gosh, because I coach a lot of very driven, successful C-suite execs, entrepreneurs, leaders. And I said, well, I can tell you what they wouldn't do. They wouldn't take any time off. And then within the hour, I was starting to feel more comfortable with the idea. And then he really showed up in a way that was like, let's talk through what that would even look like. Cause I didn't know what that even meant, Natalie. Like I knew I wasn't going to blast email all of my clients, but it's the beginning of the year. I mean, it's the least favorable time to be taking time off. And so we talked it through and put together a really simple strategy. And I sent a semi difficult note to so my first one to one of my clients I've had for a long time and got my confidence up. And then he said, okay, now I want you to let someone know who you're really intimidated by telling. And I said, well, I know exactly what that would be. So I sent the note to a few of those people, and every single one of them wrote back and said, oh my gosh, this is so incredibly inspiring. This is exactly what will serve you. And thank you for modeling what you preach and being integrity. And like every human, I try not to put all of my attention on external validation, but it was a nice reminder of like, hey, this is available to all of us, but I don't think it's something that I would have even considered, Natalie. So that's my own insight around this
Yeah.
is that this is always available to us, but it will feel very, very foreign. And so my coach that I was working with in this conversation, he had suggested a month, and I said, you know what, I can do 3 weeks. So
Well,
that's where I
21
landed.
days has a very magic thing to it. I mean, I
It
do 21
did.
coaching. 21 days is
Yeah, that's what
amazing.
it is. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so all right, so your coach helped you to discover that, you deserve the time off. And overachievers, that's what
Hmm.
we always think. Oh, I can just power my way through. I am strong enough. I'm
Yeah.
stronger than everybody else. I've got more resources. I've got more brain power. But, for you to do this, what other things have you
Hmm.
done to maintain your emotional, your spiritual, your professional, and your family health during this
Yes.
time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I've it's really forced me to go back to basics. So number one being, what do I stand for? What are my values? And I preach this a lot to my clients. And one of my values for me is connection. And I got so clear that I did not want my connection to start to fray with first of all my husband, because I we've been through some pretty stressful situations, and I joke with my girlfriends, like, if we can survive this, and I feel, and they're like, but you said that about the last thing. I'm like, no, I really mean it about this thing.
Yeah.
So connection with my husband became very clear. Connection with my three boys, who are at very important ages. They're 12, 13, almost 14, and 16. So very impressionable ages, very difficult ages, very a time when I think our boys can feel really lonely, particularly. So that was clear to me. And then also I have a really high value of experience. And I wanted to make sure that I was experiencing this in a way that felt like I was there for myself and there for my people, and also there for my clients. This was actually a gift I gave my clients. I didn't want them having the experience of me not showing up and really being to the fullest that I know how to be. So getting really grounded in my values, going back to basics, though. And when I say basics, I mean like letting everyone know in my family I'm in bed at 9, because I wasn't sleeping very well. So that meant I needed to go to bed earlier because I was waking up a lot through the night. I mean, I still am. And then cutting myself some slack in the morning. Normally, I would get up even earlier and get exercise. And it just became about, let's try to get a minimum of 8 hours sleep. We were eating out a lot and not necessarily quality food.
Yeah.
Anytime you're in the middle of something like this, you don't really feel like eating, but you need to eat, and the finances are playing a role, all of that. And so my diet became important to me, and that took some time to put into my spiritual connection. I am a Christian. I go to church. We Within that first week, our our minister for our church had reached out. We have a lot of Palisades families at our church,
Yeah.
and we gathered at his house, he and his wife's house, on that Sunday. And it was an intimate group, and I was able to really express myself and say, I'm, this is not making it easy for me to say I believe in God and I'm a Christian. And if anything, this is making me doubt a lot of been what I have been putting time into and practicing. And so it allowed for me to have some conversations like that. And then obviously a lot of prayer. And then the other thing I did was I simply closed my circle a bit and made sure I had one or two people, girlfriends in my life, that I could really connect with on a daily basis, where I just felt like there were no expectations.
Yeah.
So really just allowed me to be me and not have to answer the bazillion questions that people have. And a
Right.
lot of those conversations were just simply filled with tears and frustration. And, they continue, they haven't gone away. But so I would say back to basics is my headline for that.
And I like also that you're saying connections, making sure that you're connecting with your husband, making sure you're connecting with,
Hmm.
we all have like a network of people, and we have that close, those people that we can say
Hmm.
anything to, and
Hmm.
be our imperfect self, and we can get the honest truth from. So
Hmm.
I'm so glad that you're having that with your girlfriends. And that's where the catharsis lies, when you can be
It
actually,
is.
right?
And being willing to say, I am not in a great place right now, you guys. Like, this is incredibly hard, especially in LA. Those of you who know LA, you can go, I mean, just come down to Venice, which is a few miles from the Palisades, and people are out surfing in the water. The water's awful right now. I don't even know if they remember there were fires 6 weeks ago. I mean, everyone was just living life as if nothing happened on January 7th. So it's really been a learning in me also saying, hey, this is what's going on for me, and I will happily receive any support that you're willing to give,
Well,
however that looks.
I'm sure that, uh, I mean, look, this is an ongoing thing, and all of us
Hmm.
want to help, whether we're helping, local to Pacific Palisades and wanting to help there, local to Altadena, local to Lahaina, or even
Hmm.
thinking about how we can help some of the people around the world. Now, I mean, the sad
Hmm.
and true
Hmm.
thing here is that you now know what a lot of war-torn countries feel like.
Oh, I've
The
thought about it
different.
so much, Natalie. Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. Now, I want
Mm.
to ask you another hard question. What
Yeah.
have you learned about yourself about coping and transcending? Like, what were your challenges? Because whatever the sad but true thing here is that,
Mm-hmm.
as you were saying, it can feel just as real if you're just in your own personal depression, right? If that's at
Hmm.
9 or a 10, that can feel like a Palisades fire to you.
Hmm.
So, what have you learned about hitting
Hmm.
that desperation wall and coping with it and trying to transcend it? What have you learned and what tools? Because with a master's in spiritual psychology, I'm sure you have some tools.
I do. So I'll say the very first thing I'll say is I learned that I'm human. So even with my master's in spiritual psychology and coaching practice of 15 years, you're right, I have a huge toolkit. I learned in those first couple days that I don't have all the answers. But I can access my tools probably a little bit quicker than maybe some other people, but it was a bit of a reality check of reminding myself that it's not enough to simply have tools, that we always have to be working those muscles. It's like riding a bike. If you haven't ridden a bike in 5 years and you go to ride a bike, you're going to be a little bit wobbly. So I noticed there were some areas where I felt a bit more confident, and then other areas where if I already had a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Fear, that it would get exasperated. So
Mhm.
I know one of the things I know about myself is that I I really crave a sense of belonging. And so as people immediately started to say, "Oh my gosh, I don't think I'm going to be able to stay in LA. I'm going to move my kids out of state or up to Santa Barbara." And those families happen to be very close family friends of ours. I could feel this anxiety just coming up, bubbling up, bubbling up. And so, I think for me, one of the tools I had to immediately start to practice is a sense of real possibility and abundance. So
Mhm.
it's easy to start to go to this place of lack. And I had to remember, we live in a world that is benevolent. So if there's possibility for people to move their kids to another school, that doesn't mean that there isn't possibility for me. There's absolutely possibility for me. We just haven't sorted through that yet. We don't know that, but it's there.
Right.
So that was a strong reminder. I would say, I've relied heavily on my spiritual psychology, which does allow me to tap into this realm of, what is the opportunity in this for me? And I'll be honest, I'm sitting with those questions. I don't totally know yet. And I am more comfortable with the not knowing. You know, John, my husband, and we tend to embrace the unknown more than the known. We moved abroad right after we got married and lived in London for several years and worked internationally over there. We have moved several times here in LA. We've been in the Palisades for the last 13 years. And then 2 years ago, we moved our boys down to Costa Rica for 6 months and put them in a different school down there. So I also was reminded I do have a level of resilience, and that, gosh, it sounds so cliche. And as I'm saying this, my husband's probably laughing when he listens to this, but I do know that the universe provides and that God provides as long as I'm being intentional. It'll meet me at the point of action. And so I've been reminded of some of these beliefs that I've really bought into. And then I had an experience over the weekend that I didn't really know. This was a big eye opener for me. So
Yeah,
our house is still standing, as you know.
right.
So the difference between myself and a lot of my friends is I was able to go sort through some of my memories. Now, a lot of the stuff is ruined in our house, and our house is totally not safe for probably a year and a half to live in. But as far as like my baby books and art, I will be able to retain that. Anyway, I was at lunch on Sunday with a girlfriend of mine who lost her house. And we were chatting, and I got home that afternoon. The boys were in the car, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm missing a ring. And I only have this one ring on right now." And it was a ring that we had bought on a trip when we had gone to Colombia and spent several weeks. So it had a lot of meaning to me. And the boys were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you lost that ring," because they were there and I bought it. And I'm not making this up. I had a moment of feeling like, first I was like, "Oh, that's such a bummer." And then not shortly after that, Natalie, I was kind of okay with it. I was like, you know what? It's just a ring. Like I didn't, I think had that happened prior to the seventh, because I've misplaced things a lot,
Yeah.
I would have really had an attachment to it. And I
Mm.
didn't. I just felt like, you know what? Maybe someone else found it and they needed it more than I did. Funny enough, my 12-year-old and I called around to the different places I'd been at that day. And that evening, the restaurant called me back and said, "We found your ring in the bathroom." They were honest about it. I went and I now have it back, which is
Unbelievable.
sort of unbelievable. But it really, this whole experience, and I really believe this is a lesson that I've been learning through my husband, but also just the way in which we've chosen to live our life, that I don't need a lot to enjoy life. And that really at the end of the day, my connections and my community, which is why this has been so extraordinarily painful because our community has totally dispersed. But that's really what matters to me.
Yeah.
And so it was a reminder of some lessons that I'd already been working on.
And I have another question for you, but I want to just kind of punctuate something I think that is really important is that, you're human, you're facing things that are scary, frustrating, give you anxiety, but you're not living there. You're using
Hmm.
your understanding that there is something on the other side of that.
Hmm.
I know that people that struggle with these things, maybe they don't see that. So I guess that's why
Hmm.
your coaching program should be so important. We'll talk a little bit more
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that because look, guys, even Sarah admitted that a coach helped her to come to that reality check of put on your own.
Yep.
And every professional coach knows that's the most important thing, right? One of the most important things to always put on your own oxygen
Yeah.
mask. But here she was very reticent to do
Hmm.
that, and someone else had to say, kind of hold her feet to the fire. So, what is 2025? And I'm almost hesitating to ask you this because I know, you don't know yet, right? June
Hmm.
is a whole nother set of decisions. A house that's standing in a complete wasteland, another set of
Hmm.
decisions. So, how are you even approaching 2025?
It's such a great question. I am someone who usually does a year vision, at least a year. I'm not someone who does 5 years. I would say for this year, I'm thinking very much in terms of seasons as it aligns with what I know works for my clients and what works for my family. So for me, 2025, I am getting a lot of reminders right now of the importance of nurturing relationships.
Hmm.
And I say this because they're relationships that are being highlighted to me from out of the experience with the Palisades that I'm realizing, gosh, I wish I'd put even more time into those. And some of those people are moving away. And I will say, I will give myself credit here. I'm a very good long distance friend. And I think even my friends who live abroad and on the East Coast would say that about me. So I do make the effort. But I'm really getting reminded of intimacy is important. And what does it look like to be even more intimate with my own existing clients? I think oftentimes when we are running businesses or we're part of a business, we think about scale and gathering more. I've
Right,
always said I'm quality over quantity, but I know for sure that I scale my business through intimacy. And that's what fuels my heart. It's what fuels my clients' heart. And so, whether that's intimacy with my clients, whether it's also intimacy with my children and my friends. And so, a lot of the decisions that I'm making or that are on the table with John and I or with my team at work
right.
is really, it's a direct line back to how will this create more intimacy in my life? And so, I do have that as a tent pole. I also I do love adventure, even though at first I hate change. I'm the first to admit it. But
Right.
even being in Venice, I mean, I walked the dog out the other day and we're just a block from the skate park, and there was not just people out roller skating, it was a group of men and women roller skating and taking a dance class at the same time. It was phenomenal energy and creativity. So I know that I will use everything to the best of my ability to fuel my own creativity from this experience. And then that will inform the choices that I make throughout the rest of the year. But I'm pretty focused on 2025 with you know, a bit of a North Star in 2026, but very much 2025.
So, how do you manage work-life balance in a crisis? How is that different
Mm.
from normal work-life balance strategies?
Oh, yes. So I will say I don't believe in balance. Anybody who has worked with me knows that I have to say that for myself because I think it's a impossible feat, but I do think that we can have work-life wholeness. So for me, some days look like I'm, 70% work and 30% family or reversed.
Right.
So I'm very realistic with myself, and I think words matter. So for me, that works to remind myself that. What I have learned from all of this, though, is when you are in the middle of a crisis,
Right.
whether it's within relationship, fires burning, you name it, everything takes a lot longer. Going to the grocery store where I don't know where anything is, where I don't know any of the checkers, everything takes longer. So I am really being diligent about filling my schedule with fewer things, with prioritizing exercise, connection, rest. Whereas in the past, I might have done, 4 or 5 coaching calls in one day. I know my max right now is 3. And that might mean that some clients have to wait a little bit longer, but I'm practicing boundaries in that way so that because the times that I haven't, Natalie, I mean, I just find myself so frustrated. And I'm just like, I've done it to myself. So I think, really through boundaries, I've heard this message several times from one of the coaches I've worked with for a long time of you have to slow down to speed up. I am very much in a slowing down so that I can speed up eventually at some point this year, but not right now.
Very, very good advice. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your executive group coaching and the board.
Yeah.
That's your thing that's
Yes.
coming up in April, right? So tell me,
Yes.
what are the benefits of having the group coaching executive sessions, and how can people learn more about the board?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking me about this. I need to be better about, I want to be better. I don't need to, but I want to be better about owning this because it's the most magical program. This is my 5th year running it. And I created the board
Yeah,
because I couldn't find anything like it for myself. And it is, in a nutshell, it is a leadership coaching program that I facilitate and I curate myself, no more than 10 people. And we come together. This year it's actually for 6 months. But the reason I created this is because I really believe leadership happens in relationship. So oftentimes we are working ourselves in a silo and we can make improvements. We all can, but
right.
things get accelerated when we are interacting with others. And that's the real world. It's
Yes.
also why my group is co-ed and welcome to all gender, because the real world is that we interact with people all day long. And I really define leadership as how we show up. And that's the only thing we have control over in the sense of how we relate to people and circumstances. And the other thing that I know is that the more seasoned you get in life, the more lonely it can feel. The more that you rise to the top, the more lonely it can feel. And I have found through my clients and myself that it's really um, difficult to bring a goal and a dream to life if you do not have a group that is one willing to say the thing to you that nobody else will, which is like having your own board of directors, where
Exactly.
you are learning leadership distinctions that you can apply immediately, where you are in the experience of being coached and coaching others. So you're in the practice of really growing other leaders within this board. And of course, we have a lot of fun doing it. And so, like I said, this is my 6th year. It's I love it so much because I fundamentally believe revolutionary growth happens inside revolutionary relationships. And the type of results I've seen, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. You can read about it all on my website, but everything from people getting out of debt, people leaving a relationship they've been in for a really long time but didn't have the courage to because it kind of worked, but it lacked fulfillment. It lacked joy, all the things that you want in a continued relationship. I've seen people launch businesses that they never thought they could do. I've seen people get funding that they never thought they could get. I've seen people lose weight. I mean, I would say it really helps people create the clarity around what it is, the desire that they have, that they've probably had for a long time, but they have not been able to move the needle. And then through the support of the board, and there's also a retreat. So it includes a retreat. We've done that everywhere from in Costa Rica to Zion Park to Sedona. This year it's in Joshua Tree in September, and it's exquisite on every level. And it's an opportunity to really grow with people who I don't necessarily want to say are like minded, but they're like valued. In other words, they value connection, they value the success of others, they value living in a full expression and integrity, and they value having fun. I mean, if you're not having fun, what you're doing, we gotta start having fun. So that's the board. All the information you can find on my website, and it starts end of April. So we're enrolling now, and I will cap it at 10.
And that's sarahgibbons.co or .com.
Both. I think both redirect, but you can go to sarahgibbons.com. Originally, I had sarahgibbons.co, and then we were able to get sarahgibbons.com.
Fantastic. So Sarah
Yeah,
with an H, folks,
you got it.
and sarahgibbons.com. And so I'm just to clarify then, a lot of the sessions are actually online group sessions, and then
Yeah,
you,
that's a great question.
yeah.
Yep, great question. So I've designed it that there are 2 sessions a month. They're 2-hour sessions, which I know people are like, I can't do 2 hours. They're on Wednesdays. People don't miss these sessions. The value that you get from them, everybody shows up. And then I have a momentum session I've added in, which is think of it like an office hours. I want to be coached. I'm going to come to the momentum session. That one's not required. And then we have the retreat that is booked for early September. So it's about 3/4 of the way through. And that, like I said, will be in Joshua Tree. But everything else is virtual, which is so cool because that means I have people from all around the world that join. And this also led into the creation of the board alumni group. So I have over 20 people in this board alumni group that meets a couple times a month. It's only 1 hour, and people rarely miss those sessions. I coach and facilitate, and it's for people who've done the board, and people have done the board multiple times. But there's a real community there that people. It's the kind of people that you hope to be doing life with, but you can't quite find them. It's a different relationship than your closest friends, and people stay really close for, as far as I can see, for a lifetime.
Wow. Now,
Yeah.
who is the perfect person to reach out to you? I mean, I know that you do a lot of C-suite training, but
Yeah.
can entrepreneurs reach out as well?
Yes, absolutely. I always say my perfect person is easier to talk about in qualities. So, for example, people who really value growth, they're lifelong learners, people who have have a bias for action. They have a bias for wanting to be the best version of themselves. That means that they're motivated. It doesn't mean that by all means they have to have clarity around what they want. A lot of my people don't necessarily, they don't have great time management skills. They're going a mile a minute. But people who are also care about making an impact. I work with heads of family foundations. I
Mhm.
work with people a lot in the entrepreneurial space who they really care about the impact that they're making in this world. And I think sometimes we get a little caught up with impact having to look like it's, building a water well in Africa. It can be as simple as being a kinder person in their community and showcasing that in a way that can make, evolve other people. And then I do coach coaches. I don't market myself as a coach that specifically coaches coaches, but coaches find me, and I think that's a natural fit for me. And then I'm a business person at heart because of my background. I started at Amazon and in the early 2000s. And so I do work with a lot of people in the tech and media world and creative world because I get those industries. I get what that life is like, whether you have children, don't have children, depending on your gender, I can relate to all of that. So really just simply looking at the values and yeah, I'll leave it at that, looking at your values.
All right. Well, I want to give you the last word. So anything that you want to say about anything at all, it's your
Yeah.
platform here.
Well, first of all, thank you, Natalie. I'm honored to spend time with you, and I don't take it lightly that you chose to share my work and my story with your community. And I would say, going back to your original intention of this conversation, that regardless of the size of your a crisis that you might be in, or to call it a challenge, I really think at the end of the day, if you are having an experience that is compromising your heart and for you to really live your life fully, that these are the kind of tools, even the tools that some of the tools I shared and that you shared, Natalie, they're all applicable to every one of us. I mean, that's the part of, it's personal responsibility. Are we willing to choose to use some and find the tools that work and don't work? But I do want to say that my heart goes out to anyone who is struggling. And I think there's a lot to be struggling with right now in the world. And, whether you choose to get support from me or someone else in your life, I would really encourage you to remind you that you don't have to go about it alone. And if you're interested in the board, if that sparked your interests, please reach out to me. I meet with everyone individually to find out more about who you are and if this is the right fit. It's not just a sign up and pay. I want to be in it. And that's the same for my corporate coaching that I do and my one-on-one coaching as well.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So reach out to Sarah, especially, I mean, look, all of us. One thing I can say is that coaching and solving problems and leaning in with your heart, following your heart, it's all cumulative. Like I'm now
Hmm.
going to be, gosh, this year I'm 64. And honestly, I feel like I'm living the life of my dreams. But it was, in the beginning, trying to figure out like what wasn't aligning with my heart, what didn't align
Hmm.
with morals. So I do encourage people, even if you feel like you're super successful, that
Hmm.
if it's not in highest alignment with your morals and your
Hmm.
heart, that maybe even you consider this as well, because that's what
Absolutely.
we're saying here.
I have this is
Hello.
Buttercup. I have a lot of clients, such a good point that you made. I have a lot of clients who've come to me and they almost feel a little shame or embarrassed. It's like, I make 6 or 7 figures, Sarah. I have a sexy title. I'm really good at what I do and
Yeah.
I'm bored.
Yeah.
And my people, that is the death of our soul. Being bored is not an option. We live here for a nanosecond. And so, there's some people who like that. They like cruising in the middle lane and that works for them. I know for me, that is not my people. So if this speaks to you, to your point, Natalie, like I am all for that, a second act, third act. There's lots of us out there that can help you. And that's one of the things I love to do.
All right, gang. Thanks so much,
Yeah.
Sarah. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking time because I know that between the crisis and kids and a husband and friends and, all the things that you're dealing with, this was time. This is precious time. So I thank you for it.
Thank you. And really, what a gift to be here and a highlight of my day. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
You're
All right.
welcome.
You guys are going to be able to watch this back at my YouTube. So please be sure that you subscribe there. YouTube.com/Natalie Pace. It'll also be a podcast on Substack. I'm Natalie Pace on Substack as well. So thanks again to Sarah Gibbons. And that again is Sarah with an H, Gibbons.com. And her coursework is starting in April. So you want to reach out to her now if you're interested in up leveling, it sounds like, really, no matter
Yeah.
even if you're super successful or if you're an entrepreneur who just needs some help to get over
Hmm.
it, you know?
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.